From the outside, I looked like any other 17-year-old girl trying to survive high school. I smiled in the hallways, answered questions in class, and waved when people passed by. To most of my classmates and even my teachers, I was just Emma with the straight A's, dependable, quiet, never caused trouble. But what none of them saw, or maybe chose not to see, was how deeply I was drowning inside. I had spent years trying to make people listen. Not just hear me, actually listen. But no matter how loud I screamed with my silence, no matter how many fake smiles cracked under the weight of my pain, they all looked the other way. They believed the narrative that I was fine. That because I wasn't failing or acting out, I must be okay. They couldn't have been more wrong. It started sophomore year, when I was assigned to partner with Alyssa Martinez on a science project. Alyssa, the girl everyone adored. Head of the cheer squad, daughter of two well-known doctors in town, and practically raised by Instagram since middle school. I didn't know her personally, and she definitely didn't know me beyond recognizing my name on the honor roll bulletin. So when we were paired up, I was surprised that she smiled and said, "This'll be fun." For a moment, I thought maybe this was a chance to be seen. Not as a weirdo or some teacher's pet, but as a person. We worked together for 2 weeks. We even laughed a few times. I thought we were bonding. Until the night before our presentation, when I noticed Alyssa had deleted my name from the shared Google Doc. Every single slide I made had been replaced. All the research I'd done gone. When I asked her why, she just said, "Oh, sorry. I had to change some things to make it flow better. Hope you're cool with it." I wasn't. But I didn't say anything. I just smiled and nodded. That was the first time I realized that people like her could do whatever they wanted, and people like me were expected to just take it. After that, Alyssa didn't talk to me again. But the worst part wasn't the project. It was what happened a few weeks later. I started hearing things. Whispers in the hallway. Laughter in the cafeteria. Someone had spread a rumor that I was obsessed with her, that I had written her weird messages and tried to sabotage the project out of jealousy. People I didn't even know started calling me Creepy Emma. I tried to talk to my guidance counselor, Miss Reeves. I sat in her office, trembling, my voice cracking as I explained what was happening. She looked at me, blinked, and said, "Are you sure you're not just reading too much into things?" Alyssa's never been a problem student. That hit me harder than any rumor. After that, I stopped trying to get help. I buried myself in my work, kept my head down, and endured the whispers, the laughter, the isolation. Every time I tried to speak up, it felt like my words bounced off a wall no one else seemed to see. Teachers dismissed me. Classmates rolled their eyes. Even my parents said, "Maybe you're just being sensitive." But I wasn't. Things got worse junior year. Alyssa and her friends, especially Jake, her boyfriend and captain of the soccer team, turned it into a game. They'd leave notes in my locker that said things like, "Why don't you just disappear?" Or "Nobody wants you here." One time, someone replaced my essay with a blank page the day it was due. I got a 0. I tried to explain, but the teacher said, "Maybe next time don't wait until the last minute." I cried myself to sleep almost every night. I started having anxiety attacks in the bathroom between classes. Still, I said nothing. What was the point? My words didn't matter. But one afternoon in October, everything changed. I was walking through the courtyard when I saw Alyssa and Jake surrounded by a group of students, laughing hysterically. I wasn't close enough to hear what they were saying, but then I noticed something on Alyssa's phone, a screenshot. It was from my private blog. A blog I had started months earlier to pour my feelings into because it was the only place I felt heard, even if no one else read it. Except someone had read it, and they'd shared it. I froze. My heart started pounding in my chest so loudly it drowned out the noise around me. Because that blog wasn't just words. It was me, raw, broken, vulnerable. It had entries about my darkest thoughts, my deepest fears, and even a post where I admitted that I didn't know how much longer I could take the pain. They had turned my cries for help into a joke. That night, I sat on my bed staring at the ceiling, numb. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was tired. Tired of screaming into a void. Tired of pretending. Tired of carrying the weight of my own silence. I thought about deleting the blog, disappearing, letting them win. But then a thought hit me. What if I stopped hiding? What if, for once, I said exactly what I needed to say, and I said it in front of everyone? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I wrote, and for the first time in my life, I didn't hold back. What came next? No one was ready for. The next morning, I walked into school with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. My stomach twisted into knots, my palms were sweaty, and my legs felt like jelly. But underneath the fear, there was something stronger, resolve. I wasn't going to let them keep rewriting the story of who I was. I had spent too long letting my silence protect the people who never once protected me. That was over. I had a plan. Not revenge. Not something cruel or dramatic. Just the truth. Pure, undeniable. Unapologetic. It started with a letter, one I printed and sealed in an envelope addressed to Principal Rayner. I tucked it into my bag and walked straight to the front office before first period. I asked the secretary if she could give it to him privately. She glanced at me with that bored, half-interested look and said, "Sure." I nodded and left, praying she would actually follow through. Inside that envelope was everything. Dates. Names. Screenshots I'd taken before my blog was hacked and deleted. Even the original copy of my essay that had been swapped for a blank page. I told the truth about Alyssa, Jake, their friends, and how the school had failed me again and again. I ended it with a single line. If you read this and still do nothing, then maybe this school deserves its reputation more than I thought. Then came phase 2. I'd been asked to speak at the upcoming school assembly. It was supposed to be a mental health awareness week, and Ms. Reeves had suggested I say a few words about coping with academic stress. The irony made me want to scream. But instead, I had nodded, smiled, and said, "Sure, I'd love to." They gave me 10 minutes. And in those 10 minutes, I would say everything I'd been holding in for years. I spent the next few days preparing. Not just the speech, but myself. I kept quiet at school, acted normal, and avoided Alyssa and her friends. But inside, I was burning with everything I had to say. My parents didn't know what I was planning. They still thought I was overthinking everything and urged me to focus on the future. That night at dinner, my mom said, "You're lucky, Emma. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Don't let high school drama ruin it." She didn't know that this wasn't just high school drama. This was trauma that had shaped the way I saw myself, made me question my worth, and made me feel invisible. I wanted to scream at her. Instead, I quietly excused myself and went back to my room. The night before the assembly, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing my speech, trying to keep my voice from trembling. I knew there would be teachers in the crowd. Students, staff, parents, even the school board. Alyssa's mom was on the PTA. Jake's dad coached varsity football. They had power, influence, image. But they didn't have the truth. I did. The morning of the assembly, I stared at myself in the mirror before leaving for school. My eyes were puffy, but my chin was lifted. I had worn a plain navy sweater, one that made me feel grounded. I looked at my reflection and whispered, "They don't get to control the narrative anymore." When I got to school, the gym was already buzzing with noise. Rows of metal folding chairs filled the space, and a podium had been set up on a small stage near the front. A banner overhead read, "Mental Health Awareness. Be the voice, not the silence." The irony nearly knocked the breath out of me. Miss Reeves approached me just before the assembly started. She smiled, her clipboard in hand. "You're up third, Emma. Just speak from the heart." If she only knew. The assembly began like every other school event. The principal welcomed everyone, threw out a few corny jokes, and thanked the PTA for their support. The first speaker was a local therapist who gave a bland talk about stress management and the importance of self-care. No one listened. Phones were out. Whispers floated through the air. The second speaker was a senior named Jason who talked about losing his grandfather and how grief affected his grades. It was touching. People clapped politely. Then it was my turn. Ms. Reeves gave me a little wave from the side of the stage as I stepped up to the podium. My hands shook as I placed my paper down. I looked out at the crowd, rows and rows of students, staff, and adults. I saw Alyssa sitting in the third row, legs crossed, looking mildly bored. Jake had his arm around her chair. They weren't even pretending to care. I cleared my throat and leaned toward the mic. Hi, I'm Emma. Some of you know me as the quiet girl in the front row who always raises her hand. Some of you don't know me at all. And that's okay. Because for most of my time here at this school, I felt like I didn't exist anyway. The gym grew quiet. A few heads turned. I was asked to speak about mental health. So I'm going to talk about what it feels like to scream into silence. What it feels like to be bullied, isolated, and erased. All while the adults around you tell you to hang in there or focus on the future. I'm going to talk about what it feels like to beg for help and be ignored, not just by classmates, but by teachers, counselors, and even your own family. I saw Ms. Reeves shift uncomfortably at the edge of the gym. I saw Alyssa sit up straighter. Jake muttered something. I'm not naming names. I don't need to. Because the people who did this to me already know who they are. And the people who stood by and let it happen? You know too. A heavy silence settled over the crowd. I had my essay stolen and replaced. I had rumors spread about me, lies that ruined my reputation. I had personal thoughts from a private blog shared without my consent and turned into a joke. I was made to feel disgusting, crazy, and worthless. And every time I asked for help, I was told to just ignore it. Someone gasped. But I'm done ignoring it. I'm done pretending this is okay. Because I am not the only one. There are so many of us, quiet kids, overlooked kids, kids who carry the weight of silence because we're told our pain is inconvenient. Kids who are breaking under pressure while the people who hurt us are praised for their perfect grades or sports trophies. Now, people were sitting still. Really still. No phones. No whispers. Just the sound of my voice. You say you care about mental health. But caring means listening. It means noticing. It means asking hard questions and being uncomfortable sometimes. It means protecting people who don't always know how to protect themselves. I took a deep breath. I wrote this speech for the kids like me. The ones who sit alone at lunch. The ones who feel invisible. The ones who cry in bathroom stalls. You're not alone. And you're not crazy. And you don't have to stay silent just because no one wants to hear the truth. I looked straight into the crowd, straight at Alyssa and Jake, and said, because eventually, the truth finds its way to the light. And when it does, even the people with perfect reputations won't be able to hide anymore. Then I stepped back. The silence was deafening. Then someone clapped. One person. Then another. Then a few more. Until the entire gym erupted into applause. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. And for the first time, my words actually meant something. The moment I stepped off the stage, I felt like the ground beneath me had shifted. For years, I had been a background character in my own life, someone people looked through, not at. But now, all eyes were on me. And not in the way I used to fear. This time, they were listening. Processing. Some were shocked. Others were uncomfortable. But they heard me. And that made every word, every tremble in my voice, worth it. Miss Reeves didn't meet my eyes as I walked past her. In the hallway afterward, a few students came up to me, some I didn't even know. Hey, that was powerful. I've been through something like that too. Thank you for saying it. You're brave, Emma. Brave. That word landed like a weight on my shoulders. I didn't feel brave. I felt raw. Exposed. but strangely lighter. As I walked back to class, I noticed something else. People were staring at Alyssa, at Jake. The shift in energy was palpable. They no longer looked untouchable. The whispers weren't about me anymore, they were about them. When I passed their group by the lockers, I felt the tension ripple. Alyssa's face was pale, her arms crossed tightly. Jake glared at me like I'd set his world on fire. Maybe I had. But I didn't stop. I didn't shrink. I walked right past them like they were just noise now, irrelevant to my truth. Later that day, Principal Rayner called me into his office. I braced myself, unsure what was coming. "Emma," he began, folding his hands. "I received your letter." My heart raced. "I want to start by saying, I'm sorry. You should have been heard a long time ago. After your speech today, I've received multiple reports from students and even teachers who confirmed what you described." I blinked. "So, you believe me now?" He nodded solemnly. "We're conducting a full investigation. We've already suspended Jake while we look into academic misconduct. Alyssa is being questioned too. And we've contacted the IT department about the hacking claim." I didn't know what to say. "You were brave, Emma, and you've made this school take a hard look at itself." That was when it hit me. I had actually changed something. Even if it took years. Even if it came at a cost. I had made them listen. When I stepped out of the office, I got a text from Zoe. "Zoe, 3:42 p.m. I'm sorry. I should have believed you sooner." I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. She had been my friend, once. Before she drifted to the popular crowd. Before she started laughing along with the others. Then another message. "Zoe, 3:43 p.m. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I really mean it this time." I didn't reply. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness would take time. But I appreciated the message. It meant she had heard me too. That night at home, things were quieter than usual. My parents sat me down at the kitchen table. My mom was teary-eyed. My dad looked ashamed. We watched the video from the assembly. My mom said, voice shaking, "Emma, we didn't know it was that bad. We're so sorry." I didn't cry. I had no tears left. "You didn't want to know," I said. "You always changed the subject. You told me to move on." "We thought we were helping you focus on the future," Dad said. "You ignored my present." There was silence. Then Mom reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "We're going to do better. I promise." I looked at her. I wanted to believe her. And maybe I did, partially. But part of me was still wary. Still hurt. Still healing. Trust wasn't a switch you could flip. It had to be rebuilt. That weekend, I got an email from a girl named Sarah, a junior I barely knew. Subject: "Thank you, Body." "Hi, Emma. I just wanted to say thank you for what you said at the assembly. I've been struggling with something similar. People spreading lies, teachers brushing it off. Hearing you speak gave me the courage to finally talk to someone. I hope you're doing okay. Just thank you." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I smiled for the first time in days. That's when I realized this was bigger than me. My voice hadn't just helped me, it was giving others permission to speak up too. But the fallout didn't stop. By Monday, Alyssa's social circle had started to crumble. One by one, her closest friends started distancing themselves. Screenshots started circulating of group chats where she mocked me. Emails with timestamps matched the date my essay had been swapped. People were finally piecing it all together. At lunch, she sat with only one other girl, looking like she was barely holding it together. I watched her from across the cafeteria, and for a second, I felt something unexpected. Pity. Not because she didn't deserve the consequences. She did. But because I saw her for what she really was, someone who had built her confidence on control, on cruelty, on keeping others small. Without that, she was just a scared girl losing the grip on her fake kingdom. Jake was even worse off. The academic committee had found enough evidence to revoke his scholarship recommendation. His parents were furious. He stormed out of class one day after someone made a joke about plagiarism. No one stopped him. It was like the masks had finally cracked, and everyone could see the rotting truth underneath. I kept my distance. I didn't need to rub anything in. I didn't need revenge. The truth had done the work for me. But I wasn't done healing. One afternoon, Ms. Reeves pulled me aside. "I owe you an apology," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "I should have seen the signs. I should have followed up when you came to me about the essay. I let my assumptions get in the way of the truth." I appreciated her honesty. But I also told her what I wished I'd had back then. Sometimes, teachers forget that not every student who smiles is okay. And not every kid who cries is just looking for attention. We need more than check-ins. We need to be seen. She nodded slowly. "You're right. I'm going to work on that." By the end of the week, the school announced new student support programs, a real counseling system, a student feedback portal, anti-bullying workshops. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. A beginning. And all because someone finally spoke. Me, Emma, the invisible girl. The target. The girl who was mocked and dismissed. The girl who told the truth when it mattered. And while it didn't undo the damage, it was the start of something new. Something honest. Something free. Even though the chaos at school slowly began to settle, the storm inside me didn't just vanish overnight. Truth is, once you've been hurt so deeply for so long, it takes more than just justice to feel whole again. It takes time. It takes learning how to breathe without constantly bracing for the next hit. But something had shifted. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was allowed to exist, to speak, to feel, and not be punished for it. A week after the assembly, I found myself walking into the library, not because I was hiding, but because I wanted to be there. I sat in my favorite corner seat, the one near the window, and pulled out my journal. The same one I had filled with poems, sketches, and scribbled thoughts during the darkest nights of my life. But this time, I didn't write about the pain. I wrote about me. About how I survived when it felt like no one would catch me. About how I stood in front of the entire school and didn't let my voice tremble. About how being broken didn't mean I was ruined, just reshaped. As I sat there writing, I saw a shadow approach. It was Zoe. I looked up, unsure how I felt seeing her again. Part of me still felt the sting of betrayal, that silence she held when I needed her most. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. She took a seat across from me, setting her backpack down quietly. "I've been thinking about what you said, what you went through, and I just..." She paused, swallowing. "I was a coward. I laughed when I should have defended you. I ignored your pain when I should have stood beside you. I'm sorry." Her voice cracked, and I could see real regret in her eyes. Not performative. Not forced. Just human. I didn't know what to say back then, I admitted. I felt like the world was against me. And when even you walked away, I stopped trusting people altogether. "I get that," she whispered. "But if there's any chance we could start over, even as just classmates who smile when we pass each other, I'd like that." I looked down at my journal, fingers brushing the edge of the page. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," I said honestly. "But thank you for this. It means something." She nodded, eyes misty. "Take your time." And she left. That small moment, her apology, my honesty, it felt like a seed being planted. A possibility. Not of forgetting the past, but of allowing the future to be different. Over the next few weeks, the whispers about me faded. Not because people forgot, but because something else happened. They started respecting me. People who once looked through me now nodded in the halls. A few teachers checked in without making it awkward. Even Ms. Reeves gave me a sincere smile every morning, like she finally saw me. I joined the writing club. I had been too scared before, afraid my words would be torn apart or laughed at. But now, I realized my voice had power, and I wanted to use it for something more than survival. I wanted to create. During one of our sessions, I read a short story about a girl whose shadow whispered lies to her until she turned around and finally screamed back. When I finished, there was silence in the room. Then applause. Real applause. One of the girls, Mia, came up afterward. That story, it felt like you wrote it about me. And that's when I understood something I had never believed before. My pain wasn't just mine. It was shared, reflected. And when I gave it a voice, others could find theirs too. At home, things changed as well. My parents started attending therapy. As a family. At first, I hated the idea. I didn't want to rehash everything. I didn't want to sit in a room and listen to my parents cry about how they didn't know when I had been begging them to notice for years. But the sessions turned out different than I expected. We talked about my childhood, the years I felt invisible, the nights I cried myself to sleep, the pressure they put on me to just be strong, like strength was something you could fake until it became real. And slowly, they started listening. Really listening. One day, during a particularly intense session, my mom broke down. I thought if I kept pushing her forward, she'd stop looking back, she sobbed. But I didn't realize she was still bleeding. My dad nodded tearfully. We failed you, Emma. We're sorry. I didn't forgive them all at once. But I saw the effort. And that mattered. They started attending my writing club readings, asking about my day, encouraging me to speak, even when what I had to say was hard. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a burden in my own home. The school held a town hall at the end of the semester, an open mic for students to speak about mental health, bullying, and support. I debated whether or not to say anything. I had already told my story. What more was there to say? But then I remembered Sarah, and Mia, and the countless other students who came up to me in the days after the assembly, thanking me for saying what they couldn't. So I stepped up to the mic again. My name is Emma, I began. Some of you know what I've been through. Some of you were a part of it. And some of you helped me find my way out. I'm not here to blame anyone tonight. I'm here because I want to make sure no one else feels like I did, like they're screaming into a void and no one hears them. I looked out into the crowd. So many faces, young and old, open and waiting. We talk a lot about reputation in this school. About image. About being perfect. But perfection is a lie. It's a costume we wear to survive. And sometimes, that costume becomes so tight it chokes us. I paused, letting that sink in. We need to stop rewarding silence. Stop ignoring signs. Start asking each other, are you really okay? And be ready to hear the real answer. When I finished, there was no awkward shuffle. No polite clap. The room erupted in applause. And this time, I cried. Not because I was broken, but because I was healing. The day I walked into school and didn't feel my chest tighten with anxiety was the day I knew something inside me had shifted for good. It wasn't that everything was magically perfect now. People still whispered sometimes. Some still looked at me like I was a reminder of their own silence, of their own guilt. But I had learned not to carry their discomfort on my back like a burden. It wasn't mine to hold anymore. One afternoon, as I walked past the lockers, I saw Hannah standing alone. Her friends, if you could still call them that, had drifted away since the truth came out. No more matching outfits, no more smug laughter echoing through the halls. Just her, arms folded tightly, eyes darting like she didn't know where to go. For a second, our eyes met. I expected anger, or maybe defiance. But what I saw was emptiness, loneliness. She didn't say anything, and neither did I, but I didn't look away. Because deep down, I realized something I never thought I would. I didn't hate her anymore. Not because what she did was okay, but because I finally understood something important. People who hurt others that deeply, they're often bleeding inside too. It wasn't my job to fix her or forgive her, but it was my choice to release myself from the prison of resentment. I turned away, not out of dismissal, but out of peace. I didn't need her apology to move forward. I had built my own closure, and that was more powerful than any revenge. A few weeks later, something happened that reminded me how far I'd come. Our school announced a student speaker for graduation. They'd never done it before, said they wanted someone who represented resilience and growth. I didn't even know I'd been nominated. When Principal Myers pulled me aside after class and told me, I thought he was joking. "We've watched you," he said. "Not just survive, but lead. Inspire. You changed this school more than you'll ever realize." I blinked back tears. "Are you sure?" I asked. "There are other students with better grades, more accomplishments. But no one else spoke truth the way you did," he said. And the truth is what this school needed. Graduation day arrived faster than I expected. The auditorium buzzed with nervous excitement, caps half secured, tassels swinging wildly, families packed into the bleachers with balloons and signs. I stood backstage, holding my speech in my shaking hands. I spotted my parents in the crowd. For the first time, they weren't just present, they were proud. Not of the grades. Not of the awards. Of me. "Miss." Reeves was there too, mouthing, "You've got this," as I stepped up to the mic. I took a deep breath and looked out at my classmates, some who had mocked me, some who had stood by me, and many who had learned from what happened. "My name is Emma," I began. And I used to believe that my words didn't matter. I paused. The room was silent. I thought I had to stay quiet to survive. That if I spoke up about what was happening to me, no one would believe me. I was right at first. A few murmurs in the crowd. A few lowered heads. But here's what I learned. Even if your truth makes people uncomfortable, it still matters. Especially then. I swallowed, heart thudding. To anyone who has ever been mocked for their pain, ignored when they cried for help, or laughed at for being too sensitive, you are not weak. You are human. And being human is messy, painful, and beautiful. I smiled softly. And for those who stayed silent, or looked away when it was easier, there's still time to be better. To listen. To act. To change. The crowd was still. I used to think healing came from being heard. But I learned it really starts when you decide your story is worth telling, even if no one else claps. I looked over at Zoe, who sat near the front, eyes glistening. "Speak your truth," I said. Because the world doesn't change from silence, it changes when someone finally has the courage to speak. And with that, I stepped back from the mic. A pause. Then thunderous applause. People stood. Some cried. My mom hugged my dad and wiped her cheeks. Miss Reeves clapped so hard her hands turned red. And Zoe? She stood, both hands over her heart. After graduation, I walked out into the parking lot, diploma in hand, air thick with summer and new beginnings. My little cousin ran up to me, tugging on my gown. "Emma, you're famous," she giggled. "Mom said you saved your whole school." I laughed, scooping her up. Not saved. Just told the truth. As the crowd began to scatter, a familiar voice called my name. It was Mia, from the writing club. "Hey," she said, slightly breathless. "I wanted you to have this." She handed me a small journal. On the cover, it said, "Your words matter." "I got this for you," she smiled. "Because your story made me want to write mine." My throat tightened. "Thank you," I whispered. And as I hugged her, I realized what I had truly created through my pain wasn't revenge or pity. It was connection. A ripple. Something real. That summer, I kept writing. Not just in my journal, but on blogs, forums, anywhere young voices needed to be heard. I started a community online, a space for teens who felt invisible. It grew faster than I expected. Not because I was special, but because people were starving for honesty. I didn't need to be the loudest voice anymore. I just needed to make space for others to speak. And in doing so, I discovered the real power I had been searching for all along. The power to heal. The power to lead. The power to be heard. And so, if you ever feel like your words mean nothing, that your pain is a punchline, that your truth is too messy for the world to hold, remember this. The silence may be loud, but your voice, it's louder. And when you finally speak, they will listen, even if it's too late for them. It will never be too late for you.